Welcome back to CIA Declassified. We move from the inner mind to the outer reaches of the solar system. Today we're examining Project SCANATE, the precursor to what would eventually become the Stargate program. This is not our first foray into the world of psychic intelligence. Our archives contain multiple episodes on remote viewers and the hundreds of viewing sessions that have been declassified over the last few decades. If you're just joining us, we recommend visiting our back catalog to understand the rigorous, almost clinical protocols the agency used to turn the unexplained into an operational asset. Today, we look at the first remote viewing experiments. Specifically, we look at the day the agency tasked psychics with visiting the planet Jupiter before the Pioneer 10 spacecraft ever arrived. It is April 27th, 1973. At the Stanford Research Institute, SRI, Ingo Swann sits across from CIA-monitored researchers. The prompt is simple. Coordinates are given for the target, Jupiter. It is important to state from the outset everything we discuss today is based on declassified nonfiction records. The following session is a matter of historical record, and as with all things in this field, it remains a subject of intense speculation and scientific debate. Quote from Ingo Swann. There's a planet, very bright, it's huge, it's got I see a very thin ring around the planet. It's very high up, maybe even higher than the atmosphere, end quote. When Swann uttered these words in 1973, the scientific community believed Jupiter was a ringless planet. It wasn't until March 1979, 6 years later, that Voyager 1's cameras captured the faint, dusty halo Swann described. Swann continued his session describing swirling gaseous masses and a crystalline upper atmosphere. He noted the colors are very vivid, oranges, yellows, reds. He also reported a sense of immense pressure, describing a descent toward what he perceived as frozen hydrogen and metallic peaks. To understand the weight of these sessions, one must look at the Cold War climate of the early 70s. The agency wasn't looking for enlightenment. They were terrified of a psychic gap. Declassified memos suggest that the Soviet Union was spending upwards of 60 million rubles annually on psychotronics. The Jupiter experiment was, in part, a calibration test, a way to see if a viewer could bypass the physical limitations of light and distance to bring back verifiable data that no human yet possessed. Internal SRI documents reveal that during these deep space probes, Swann's physiological state was under constant surveillance. Researchers noticed a significant drop in skin sweat response and a shift into deep alpha, theta brainwave patterns, suggesting that the viewing wasn't merely an imaginative exercise, but a profound neurological shift. This led to the speculation that the mind could decouple from local space-time, a concept that the agency's physicists like Hal Puthoff and Russell Targ attempted to frame within the emerging theories of quantum interconnectedness. Furthermore, Swann's report included descriptions of Jupiter's magnetic field, specifically mentioning tremendous magnetic auroras and a very high shimmering belt of radiation. At the time, while the existence of a magnetosphere was suspected, its sheer scale and the intensity of the radiation belts were not fully realized until the Pioneer 10 flyby later that year. This raises the question, was the viewer accessing a shared consciousness, or was he sensing the electromagnetic signatures of the planet itself? The session also delved into the chemical composition of the Jovian clouds. Swann claimed to see crystals in the air that look like shards of glass, which some modern planetary scientists speculate could be a description of ammonia ice clouds. The transcript records Swann's confusion as he described liquid water that isn't really water, a possible interpretation of the supercritical fluids that exist under the extreme pressure of the giant planet's lower atmosphere. Interestingly, the agency's interest in these planetary probes wasn't just about astronomy. It was a proof of concept for long-distance penetration. If a viewer could see the rings of Jupiter from a darkened room in California, they could certainly see inside a Siberian missile silo. The Jupiter site was the extreme stress test for the viewer's signal-to-noise ratio, a way to determine if the human mind could maintain clarity across millions of miles of void. Critics within the agency, however, pointed to the descriptions of mountains as evidence of mental overlay, the mind's tendency to fill in gaps with familiar terrestrial images. Yet the defenders of the program argued that these mountains might actually be the viewer's interpretation of massive, dense atmospheric structures, or the solid core theories that were being debated in high-level astrophysics at the time. This tension between literal and symbolic data remains one of the most debated aspects of the declassified files. Lastly, we must consider the psychic echo mentioned in later memos. Some researchers speculated that the act of remote viewing a target as massive as Jupiter actually had a physical effect on the viewer. Swan reported feeling heavy and exhausted for days after the session, leading to classified discussions about whether the human nervous system was being taxed by the sheer gravitational or magnetic magnitude of the target. This suggested a biological cost to visiting distant worlds that the agency had to account for in future operational planning. But as we look at the document, officially titled Report on the Jupiter Site, we are met with a wall of ink. The heaviest redactions in the SCANATE files occur right after Swan describes the liquid to solid transition of the planet's core. Large blocks of text are blacked out. Speculation among historians suggests these redactions may involve operational protocols, the specific mental anchors the agency used to verify if a viewer could retrieve data from a location that possessed no human landmarks. Others speculate the missing text contains Swan's description of potential magnetic field interactions, data that might have been classified for its potential use in identifying submarine positions or underground bunkers back on Earth. Was it a success? If we measure success by hits, the Jupiter site is the program's crown jewel. The ring description is an undeniable anomaly that science has yet to fully explain through conventional means. However, the agency's internal evaluation was more measured. While they noted the shocking accuracy of the atmospheric descriptions, they were troubled by the misses, specifically Swan's description of solid mountain ranges, which contradicts the modern understanding of Jupiter as a gas giant. Despite the contradictions, the operational breakthroughs were undeniable. Project SCANATE proved that a repeatable protocol could be established. It moved psychic research out of the parlor trick era and into the structured intelligence gathering framework. It led to the refinement of coordinate remote viewing, CRV, a methodology that would be used for decades to track everything from lost Soviet aircraft to kidnapped officials. The Jupiter site remains a window into a time when the government was willing to look anywhere for an edge, even into the darkness of deep space. Join us for our next episode, where we pivot from the vacuum of space to the humid jungles of Southeast Asia. We will be exploring Project Jenny, a non-fiction look at the use of a converted C-121 aircraft designed to broadcast propaganda and haunting ghost signals to the Vietnamese coastline, blurring the lines between electronic warfare and psychological terror. In the meantime, I'll see you in the archives.